Hello, salam, shalom, namaste, sat sri akal, aloha, hola, ciao, bonjour, buna, and privyet. I hope I said that right. But you're so welcome. I'm so happy you've joined us again, and I'm so happy to be joining you again. And we have a very special guest with us. I'm sure you will learn so much from listening to our conversation with her today. And it's Sheila Kadeer, who is an intuitive business alchemist. I think that's so cool. Welcome, Sheila.
Thank you. Lovely to be here. Lovely to be talking to you today.
Yes, I'm so excited to learn more from you. And actually, will you jump right in and tell us more about who you are and what you do?
Yes, of course. So my name is Sheila. I'm an intuitive business alchemist, and um, my background is actually in corporate and the police as well. So I've had an interesting journey from police, private investigation, and now to coaching women who want more out of life. You know, they want to create a legacy business. They want to create change and make an impact in the world. So that's what I help them with. I help removing the core wounds that are holding women back from elevating to their next level income and impact, so that they can attract all the clients that they desire and create that life that brings them that fulfillment, that joy, and knowing that they are fulfilling their mission and having that life of freedom that they want for themselves and their children. So, and I do this through um, uh, subconscious work, energetic work. So I'm a therapist and healer, and I heal on all different levels as well. So that could be past life, could be ancestral, but I kind of like get to the core wounds and take them out at that core.
Oh, that is so cool and so important that you do that. And I know one of the things that you're really amazing at teaching people about is this idea of soul wounds. Can you
Mm.
tell me more about that?
Yeah, so this is a phrase that I came up with for that this I feel that there are four core collective wounds. So these are in the collective, and these are the witch wound, the priestess wound, the starseed wound, and the sisterhood wound. And they all kind of like intermingle really, but um, they're kind of like ingrained in our, I kind of like feel that they're ingrained in our soul. And when we come into this life, there are remnants that are attached to us from these wounds that have come over from past lives, from our ancestors. They're in our DNA, for example. And they kind of like stop us. So as soon as we start to become successful, one of these wounds can appear or start to make itself known to stop you, to hold you back. And I find this a lot with spiritual entrepreneurs. They get to a certain point and then they can't speak, you know, they can't go on lives, or they feel that they can't put their stuff out there, their work out there. They feel embarrassed or ashamed. And this comes from that wounding from those past lives and our ancestors.
That is really fascinating. Can you tell me more about, so maybe we can talk a little bit about each of the four kinds of wounds, just so we have a better understanding of what each one of them might look like or feel like, so that if I have it, I can recognize it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh,
Absolutely. So the witch wound, this is from the trauma that's been passed down from generation to generation, from the times of the witch trials where women were persecuted, women in their power, such as healers or midwives or um, the herbalists, the medicine women, those that had that intuition, the intuitive insight. The patriarchy wanted to close us down. And so the women were persecuted. And what happened is the women would be scared to, show their gifts or show that they were intuitives or psychics or the healers. And then their sisters or their family would start turning on them because they didn't want to be accused. And so this is kind of like running through the generations, and women were literally, they were murdered for being witches. And that sits in the DNA, it sits in our past lives. And as soon as for example, in this life, when a woman or a spiritual entrepreneur thinks, right, I'm going to get my gifts out there, this fear comes up. It's like, oh no, what if people are watching me? What if I'm being judged? What if I get hanged or killed for sharing? And it's this inherent fear that drives us and stops us and keeps us small. And this affects our chakras as well. So the chakra system is our energy system. So I find a lot of women have throat chakra blocks, which is they don't want to speak.
Right.
And this is that not wanting to share their gifts or talk about their gifts or feeling small or ashamed for being psychic or intuitive. And it's like literally hiding your light. So that's the witch wound.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. And I see so much of that happening even in today's world. It's still, I know there's like people who really believe in the power of intuition and other such related abilities. But there is a large part of the population, especially in the Western cultures, where these things have come to be seen as just like, oh, woo-woo and not real. Like people don't take them seriously anymore. And so for people who have these gifts, they can still be feeling that kind of fear of being laughed at or ostracized. And I know in, for example, some religious communities, including some parts of the Muslim community that I belong to, there are people who have these attitudes of if you have these kind of abilities, because they don't believe they're real, they don't believe they're true, that not only can you be laughed at, but just as you were mentioning in the context of history of the witch trials, people can actually get really nasty. And so even now, I know this is a problem for sure. Hey, thanks for tuning into this episode. Hope you're getting value out of it. For your information, this episode has been sponsored by the Happiness 101 program. Are you a change maker, coach, trainer, or healer? Are chains of fear holding you back from making the impact and income you desire? Using a unique combination of positive psychology and the spiritual wisdom of our most effective change makers, the Happiness 101 program helps you break through your limiting beliefs and manifest the abundance and success you desire with fun and ease. Interested? Book a free Happiness 101 exploration call with me, your happiness expert, Samia Bano. Just use my online calendar link in the show notes. Now, back to the show.
Yeah. And there's also that deep fear of men or authority as well that comes with that. So for example, I mean, this showed up for me quite a lot. So and it shows up for a lot of women actually. You'll be driving along in your car and there's a police car behind you and you automatically go, oh my God, they're after me. What have I done? And it's, it comes from that. It's this fear of authority. And that can really impact women in their business because, you might not want to get your taxes done or your accounts done, and because you fear authority. So that can get you into trouble in your business as well and hold you back there because you might not want to become VAT registered or take the next step in your business because of that fear of or the money side and or I need an accountant and all these things come up.
Mm. Oh, yes. Thank you for sharing those examples of how this trauma can look like in our life. What's the second kind of trauma? Soul wound trauma?
So the second one is the priestess wound, and this goes back to the times where women were priestesses in the temples. So this would go back to Egyptian times, um, Atlantean, Lemurian times. So we're going, way back, where the women who had that power, so they were the oracles, they were the intuitives again, and their power was taken from them by men. It was misused by the men. And so what happened is they shut their power down. And they kind of like went underground because it wasn't safe to be a priestess, and it just wasn't safe anymore. And they were also abused. So there was a lot of abuse going on. And so their sacral chakra and their solar plexus chakras all kind of like closed down. And so I see this quite a lot in women now where there's this fear. And they're very much, it's very much interlinked with the witch wound. They're very similar, but it's from those times of being judged and having to hide again. So it's like going underground and having to hide because their power was taken from them and they were abused by the men. So this kind of like shows up for women now, like not wanting to get on social media, not feeling safe. So very similar to the witch wound. And it will also make you procrastinate, make you feel overwhelmed. You don't want to share your voice again. So again, there is a similarity, but it stems from that time when we were temple priestesses and our power was taken from us.
Yes, the priestess exercises her power in a different context
Yeah.
than the witch did. Yes, and I know like in many traditions, like so many ancient traditions, there were like these rich cultures where women played these roles of priestesses or similar. They had like similar functions. Like it wasn't all down to the men to regulate and lead their religious and faith communities. Women actually had these amazing, powerful roles to play. But over time, it got shut down. And I mean, in the Muslim community, we don't have like priesthood or anything as such at a formal level. But for sure, even in our community, we have seen, like, for example, up to 1,000 years ago, it was very common for there to be women's mosques that were led by women, where women
Mm.
preached and taught, and they were the leaders and, recognized leaders of the community. But for the last 1,000 years, they pretty much died down to the
Mm.
point where people forgot that it used to be super normal to have
Yeah.
women's
Yeah.
mosques. And actually, the reason I thought of this is because a few years ago, I think it was about 7 years ago now, that the very first women's mosque in America was started by someone that I actually happen to know right here in Los Angeles, where I am. And there was such huge like controversy and so much like hate and just like a lot of just people getting angry, and I was like, why?
Mm.
This is not actually something we have just invented out of the blue.
Mm.
This
Yeah.
actually used to be a part of our history, but there was just so much anger and suspicion and like just people feeling like, why are you doing this? How dare you do this?
Mm. And it's not wanting the women, the female to
Yeah,
have that power.
yeah,
Power
yeah.
was hard for the
Yeah.
men.
Mm,
And that's kind of like carried on now, isn't it? If you look at like equal pay and things like that,
yeah. Yeah.
it's not stopped really, has it?
Mm-mm. So what's the third kind of soul
No.
wound?
The third one is the sisterhood wound, and again, very, very interlinked. And this has its roots in the burning times as well, and the rise of the patriarchal society. So this is where women were made to betray their sisters, if you like. So, pointing the finger, it's her, it's not me, it's her. And, even within the family, sisters were literally turning on each other and pointing the finger at their mothers and their sisters. And so it's like the patriarchy pitted the women against each other. And so this led to a really big mistrust of women. And you see this now where, you might be on social media and you might be looking and scrolling and judging other women. Like, oh, who does she think she is? And it's just from this deep, deep wound where, you've been outcast or you've been put against someone. And so you do feel that it's like, well, who does she think she is? And so you keep yourself small again. You don't want to get out there. You might find it very difficult to set boundaries with other people as well. So this is where, you get issues with clients stepping over your boundaries because of this deep wound. And you might find also and this comes from, we kind of like grow up with this as well, because this kind of like comes from our childhood as well, where you'll have kids or girls being mean, the mean girl syndrome, where they are mean to other girls, or they'll gossip. And it comes from this sisterhood, and jealousy as well, all comes from this sisterhood wound. And so, you'll compare yourself, you'll put yourself down. You won't want to collaborate with other women. So again, this goes way back, because in the past times, we would collaborate. We'd have, the temples, we would collaborate and do things together. But now we don't do that, because we don't trust other women. So it's a wound that comes up. And again, they're all linked. So, they overlap.
Yes. And another way in which I'm wondering if you see this being part of the sister wound as well, like one of the dynamics that I have seen in the relationships among women, especially this was true when I lived in India and Pakistan, where like my family and we were, well, certainly in India, we were in a smaller town, and our family lifestyle was pretty segregated. The culture at large around us was pretty gender segregated. And so on the one hand, you know, the deepest, closest relationships I had in my life were with other girls and women. But then I guess a big part of that also was the deepest conflicts and problems that I had were also with other girls and women. And one of the aspects of it was that, you know, when we're thinking about all these rules that patriarchy imposes upon us that are actually, um, you know, stifling for a woman, um, that other women are really the frontline enforcers of those rules. So it's not just that you're telling on someone um, when they might be in trouble, uh, but it's that you won't even allow your sister or your mother or your daughter to do something that is going against the rules. So like if a woman wants to stand up for her right to, for example, choose her own partner in marriage, the other women will tell her, no, forget
Mm,
it. This is, you have to accept the match that is made for you.
mm,
That this dream that you're seeing to, or that you can choose your own partner, that is not acceptable. It's not real. It will just get you in trouble, and they will take active steps to sort of discourage you and prevent you
mm.
from living this dream or acting upon this dream for yourself. And you feel that pressure and that um, this enforcement happening. You feel it most directly from the other women around you, because you have so little interaction with the men. And so is that part of the sister wound as well?
Yeah, it does sound like it. So it's that fear. Again, it's the fear of the authority, isn't it? It's a fear of, well, if we don't do it, that this is the way we've been told we have to do it. So we need to conform. It's that conformity, and wanting to, in a way, wanting to please the patriarchy. Um, so yeah, that feel it, and again, they're all interlinked, but that feels more like it is the sisterhood wound. It's, your sisters, although they want, they should want the best for you, really they don't, because they actually secretly might want you to be unhappy.
Right, because it's sort of like, sharing in that experience. Like just the other day, I watched a lot of Indian dramas.
Yeah.
um and there was this like whole episode, and the scene in it was that there's this um lady who was in an abusive relationship, and she made the decision to leave the relationship. She was like, I'm gonna leave, I cannot take this anymore. And other women around her were like, no, how can you do that? How can you abandon your family? How can you break your marriage? You have to make it work. You haven't made enough effort, make more effort. And she was like, no, I don't want to do that. How can you tell me to do that? You're a woman. You should support me. And you're
Mm.
like, and one of the women was like, look at my life. Haven't I been living with my husband for the past 20 years? And you know what he is like to me. And look, I'm making it work, and you
Mm.
need to make it work with your partner, you know?
Yeah,
So
yeah.
it's just like sometimes it's that.
Mm. Absolutely, yeah, yeah.
Mm.
And it's like you don't want, so in a way you don't want that other person to be happy because you're not happy. That's kind of like part of that wounding as well.
Mm. Mm. Okay, what's the fourth wound that we should be aware of?
So the fourth wound is something that I've called the starseed wound. So this is, this really is people that, and again, this may be a little bit out there and woo-woo, but there are people that don't actually originate from Earth. Okay, so they've had past lives and incarnations on other star systems, but they come to Earth to live their Earth life. And these, for me, what I'm finding are, these are the spiritual entrepreneurs, these are the change makers, these have got big missions, but they don't really know it. It's like they've been cut off from that. So the planets and the star systems that they've come from, that they've had previous lives on, are much more evolved than Earth. So when they come into the density of Earth, it's really heavy. It's really, there's so much pain and suffering here, and they're not used to it. So they get lost. They find society very hostile. They're incredibly sensitive, and they feel like they don't belong. So there's this feeling of not fitting in. And that is from them, actually, they're not from here, so they're not going to fit in. And so what I help people do is understand where they actually are from and help them connect to their mission here, because they have got a mission that they are here to complete, but they've been so cut off from it. And they just don't feel like they belong anywhere. So they find life very, very difficult.
Hmm. Interesting. When you were sharing and describing this, it immediately made me think of the Buddha and Jesus. Like, these are, I mean, like, for example, we know the story about the Buddha and how and actually, like when he, first of all, he, people try to, according to the story, I don't know how much of it is factual and how much of it, is just the story to teach us a lesson. But the story that I have heard is about how there was a prophecy made that, he would, that when he grew up, that he would, become this kind of person that would leave the world and abandon his kingdom and so forth. And so his parents tried to shield him from any kind of knowing any kind of suffering in life, because they hoped that that would keep him with them and is, committed to staying in the kingdom. But at some point he got exposed to the
Mm-hmm.
sufferings of people in the world, and it shook him to his core, and
Yeah.
then he left on his journey to become the Buddha, to become the enlightened one. um, and he was always like, I mean, he was such a soul apart, from
Mm-hmm.
how other people around him were. Um, and I guess from a certain perspective, he never fit in
Yeah, yeah,
in with other
absolutely.
people. And um, I mean, even when he came back, once he was awake, once he was enlightened, he was still like so so much more advanced than everyone else around him.
Yeah,
And I mean, I see that with the story of Jesus,
yeah,
although in a slightly different context. Actually, now that I'm thinking about it, I see that in the story of the Prophet Muhammad and a lot of the other great prophets and sages and saints that we know about.
yeah, absolutely. So, they are these enlightened
Mm,
beings, if you like,
uh-huh.
that are here for a reason. They're here to spread light and to impart their knowledge
Mhm.
on humanity and help humanity in some way. And there are a lot more of these light workers, if you like, or these star seeds coming to Earth now, because the Earth is going through a big shift. As you know, with things that are happening now, we are going through a big shift, and we need these people to wake up now and
Mm,
step into their mission. But they just feel, and it's like they feel homesick and they don't know why. And it's because they're not at home. They're not home. This is not their home. And so it's helping them to fit in. And a lot of the times they will have very, very difficult childhoods as well, because they don't fit in with their family. It's like they've been plonked into a family
yeah.
and they don't relate to any of them,
Mm,
because they're such evolved souls and lovely, absolutely beautiful, bright energies. And we've got a lot more of the children, like the crystal children and the rainbow children coming in, who are much more enlightened. Um, and they're here to help humanity. So yeah, that's the last one, is the star seeds. They come in with this wounding of, why am I here? I don't know what I'm here to do.
mm,
Um, and it's just, they need to be woken up. They need to be shown their mission, basically, and woken up to that.
Yeah. Yeah. And I can see what you mean about all of these different wounds being sort of interlinked because uh like anytime you are different from the norm, like whether it's because you have the the powers of the witch or the priestess, or whether it's that you're this star seed, it sets you apart.
Yeah.
And mm, yes, indeed. So so my gosh. Okay, so now I feel like I have a much better sense of what these wounds are and what they can look like in our lives. So what are some things that we can begin to do to heal? Like, yeah, like what is maybe the first step to the healing process in the way that you work and help your people?
So the way that I do this is I do this through past life regression. I do a lot of past life regression work. So this is taking people back to those past lives, back to that time where they were a witch, where they were persecuted, back to the first lifetime, and then we heal that. We do some work around healing what happened in that life, so they can take their power back. Um, we do this with the priestess wound as well. And I do a lot of ancestral healing as well. So this is going back through the lines, the ancestral lines, seeing what's going on there. And because I'm intuitive, I can kind of like see what's going on. So I will also get visions of what may have happened for this particular person. And because I see things on an energetic level as well, I work with someone that I call the etheric surgeon, who helps to release blockages, the energetic blockages. So we release those as well. Um, One of the quickest ways for like healing the witch wound is to work on your chakras. So I see a lot of throat chakra issues. This is the biggest thing that I see. And this is the thing that stops entrepreneurs from speaking out and getting their gifts out there. So, just healing that chakra, doing some chakra work can really help as well. But most of my work is through past life regression, ancestral healing, energetic healing, and I do a lot of subconscious work as well. So taking people under hypnosis to revisit things and times. And a lot of it, sometimes it's in this life. So I don't rule this life out. Um, but it's, yeah, there's quite a lot to it, but it's all in terms of past lives. And I also flip into different dimensions as well. So we can have lives in alternate dimensions. So we're going down a completely different line there. But I go into the dimensions as well, and I heal along the past timeline and the future timeline as well. So we stop it for any future generations, so that your future generations or the client's future generations do not have that wounding anymore. So that's
That's really,
how I do it.
yeah, that is really cool. And I'm so glad that you uh, mentioned about healing the future timeline as well, because oh my, just the fact that, if I have one of these traumas that has been passed down to me down all these generations,
Mm.
the last thing I would want to do once I have awareness of this, to pass it down to further future generations.
Mm.
Oh,
Mm.
mm, that is so cool. And it just speaks also to, the reality that time is a relative experience. And in fact, even in the theory of the relativity of time, which Einstein first made popular and so forth, it's like past, future. This is actually like a perspective issue.
Mm.
You can, in fact, um, you know, like it's like our brains limit us to experiencing time in this very linear fashion. But in fact, time is not like that.
No, it's, from
Yeah,
my perspective, it's circular. So
yeah,
you can be at this point here, you can go forward, you can go back,
yeah, yeah.
but you're at this one point. So I see it as circular.
That is so cool. That is so cool. And I just had like one curious question come up when you mentioned like healing through past life regression or hypnosis, where you help people sort of get in touch with, the source of these wounds. But then I know as you mentioned, you also practice energy healing. And I was just wondering, I know it's really helpful when you have the ability and the opportunity to gain awareness of where your wounds are coming from at this deeper level in terms of the healing process. But if it's for some reason, if someone is not able to get that insight, that awareness, is it still possible for them to heal the wound in this moment anyway? Maybe through energy healing or some other process?
Yeah, absolutely. So um, usually the awareness will come. So when you're doing any kind of healing, that awareness will come. They'll get oh yeah, that feels right to me. But they'll just get an inner knowing. And sometimes all you need is that, that light switch going on. Go, oh yeah, that makes sense. That's why I do this. And
Yeah.
then you can actually heal it in that moment. But it's having that conscious awareness,
Mm-hmm.
kind of like gives you that, okay. And sometimes that's all you need.
Yeah.
Um, doing any kind of healing work will give you that, because you'll feel something, a memory will come up, or you will just get something, and that will be the now I get it.
Mm, that is so cool. Thank you so, so much. And I'm having so much fun learning from you. I don't want to end this conversation, and it's time for us to wrap up for today. Do you have any last words or thoughts to share with us for now?
um wow, I didn't what a question. So yes, so we all have these wounds, so it's nothing to be ashamed of. These are collective wounds,
Mm,
and we all have aspects of them.
yes.
um, and when we understand that, and when we get a handle of that and go back and do that work, our lives can change. And we don't have to hold on to those restrictions or those constraints anymore, for ourselves or for our children.
Oh, thank you. So on that amazing note of hope and healing, we're going to go ahead and wrap up for today. And I will just remind you, our listener, to please make sure you check the show notes, because we're going to add Sheila's links in the show notes. I'll add my links in the show notes. Please reach out for help and support um, whenever you're ready for that. And until we connect next time, I just wish you lots and lots of peace and joy.